We were married for almost 19 years, and this happened to me just under 2 years ago. I'm a math teacher at a local high school, and my wife, Elaine, is a hard-charging executive director for a major company. We were the quintessential hometown couple, the high school sweethearts who stuck together through college and came back home to put down roots. We were like two peas in a pod, completely different, but fitting together just right. Weekends were our time, whether it was picnics in the park, quiet evenings on the porch with our favorite books, our sacred tradition of making breakfast every Sunday morning. Our life was peaceful, and I wouldn't have traded it for the world. However, as of late, a subtle shift seemed to weave its way into our routine. Elaine's business meetings, which were usually during the day, began to intrude on our evenings and extend into the late hours of the night. One thing that was catching my attention: her phone had become something she seemed inseparable from. As weeks passed by, the change became increasingly evident. Elaine started spending less time at home, often coming back from business meetings. Well, past midnight, she was glued to her phone, responding to texts or emails. Even in the wee hours of the night, it wasn't just the constant work-related interruptions that bothered me, but the veil of secrecy that had enveloped her actions. I'd asked casually about her day, the meetings or the messages, and she'd respond with ambiguous phrases like, "Just some budget stuff," or "Just a late-night suggestion from the big boss." Even with her responses, I still didn't believe her, but I had nothing to go on. My suspicions didn't go away, even after she tried to put my mind at ease. She was quick to reassure me, brushing off my concerns as needless worries. She said the company was facing some significant challenges requiring her constant attention. She apologized for being distant and promised to make more time for us for a while. Things did improve, and I dared to hope that my worries had been baseless, but old habits die hard, and soon she was back to her previous patterns. I couldn't shake off the feeling that something wasn't right. After many sleepless nights, I decided to seek advice from my trusted friend. He was a retired Army major who at one time went through a nasty divorce in which his wife cheated on him, but he kept most of his assets. He always gave me good advice. I told him what my concerns were, and I had some suspicions about my wife, and he flat out said to me, "One thing I've learned from my time in the military is to trust your gut. If something feels off, it usually is." Taking his advice to heart, I started paying closer attention to Elaine's behavior. I monitored our phone bills, looking for unusual patterns or frequently dialed numbers. I noticed she often made calls to a particular number late at night. When I confronted her, she told me it was just a colleague who was the liaison for the city and her company, who was a night owl like her. One night while she was asleep, I checked her phone. I knew it was an invasion of her privacy, and it was against my principles. But the doubt and fear eating away at my sanity pushed me to it. I scrolled through her message and found nothing out of the ordinary. There were lengthy threads about company budgets, community events, and the usual company projects. But then I came across a number that wasn't saved. The text exchanges were startlingly intimate, filled with inside jokes, personal anecdotes, and flirty emojis. The messages didn't get too sexual or raunchy, but they did put me on alert. I didn't question her more about why she was coming home late-night phone use. I just decided to keep digging behind the scenes to see what I could come up with. After about 2 weeks, nothing really changed. I called my friend and we talked about it. He said, "Look, she is going to keep telling you the same thing. Just do what you need to do and find out what she is up to, if she is up to anything." Later that night, I did some research on voice recorders, cameras, and other spying equipment. The voice recorders were ruled out; that wouldn't give me concrete evidence. After all, she was executive director for the company and talked to many people about different city and business projects. I contacted and hired a private detective to see and hear what I couldn't hear when she was not home. And the private investigator cost me $7,000. I gave the private detective everything I knew about my wife's schedule. What time she went to work. What time she usually gets home. What kind of car she drove, and the spot she usually went to for lunch. I waited for about 3 weeks before I got the call from the private detective. I met him at his office to review the information. He gathered the man-produced photographs, unmistakable proof of Elaine's infidelity there. She was engaged in intimate moments with the man who was not me. The detective had pictures of them kissing in restaurants they mostly met after work. He even had photos of them going into a hotel a few times. He even surveillanced her while she was in Walmart alone once, but she was shopping for another phone. Keep in mind she already had a phone. The detective wasn't sure she bought this other phone. This man turned out to be none other than a man who owned 3 restaurants in the city and owned 4 more in the neighboring city. I wrestled with my emotions, but I had to approach this carefully. I felt an overwhelming desire to confront her to see her reaction. When her lies were exposed, direct confrontation would only lead to a heated argument, and I needed more than just a confession. I needed justice. And for that, I needed to buy my time and plan my next moves carefully. I decided to seek legal counsel before confronting Elaine. The following day, I moved out of our shared bedroom, making an excuse about needing some space due to work stress and I was getting sick. I didn't want to get her sick. I broke the news to my father. You could hear the sadness in his voice over the phone. He said if I needed anything financially or otherwise, let him know. Meanwhile, I contacted a divorce attorney, made an appointment to see what I needed to do to get the divorce process started. My attorney also told me that infidelity is a crime in Virginia. It's actually a Class 4 misdemeanor but rarely prosecuted. I didn't care about that. My plan was to make her realize what she has done. The only thing we shared was the house and 2 cars, furniture and some electronics. We have 2 kids who are on their own. They don't know what is going on. I will tell them when the time is right. My attorney also said if I have any joint accounts with her, start moving some of the money, don't move it all at once, and open up another account in my name. I filed for divorce under the grounds of infidelity, and I was seeking alimony and the equal distribution of assets. About a week later, Elaine came to me and said she was going out of town for a few days. The company was looking at purchasing a building to expand to another location. I was nice to her. I told her to have a good trip, but she said something when I said that. She asked, "Was there everything?" Okay. Now, remember, I have moved out of the bedroom and I gave her a lame excuse for doing so when she left. I moved out, didn't give her any warning that I was leaving. She was only gone for 3 days when she came back. That's when the divorce papers were served. I wasn't there when she received them. Her reaction was a barrage of accusatory texts, bitter words aimed to wound. She called me cold, heartless, and much worse. I read her messages and I still didn't retaliate in any negative form or fashion. The court proceedings were grueling. Every appointment was an opportunity for Elaine to lash out, her words etched with bitterness. Despite the strain, I remained stoic, choosing to let my lawyer do the talking. I knew the evidence was on my side, but nothing could have prepared me for the sense of vindication. When the judge granted my alimony claim as a director, my wife made almost $90,000 a year. What? I didn't know she was a senior executive director. Apparently they had more than one director at her job. I was awarded $1,100 per month for 9 years, or until I remarried. My lawyer tried to get it extended, but the judge cited that I was getting half of the proceeds from the sale of the house and I had gainful employment. Moreover, the equity of our shared home was to be split, and that meant Elaine was going to lose a significant chunk of what she once considered hers. But after the divorce, I wasn't done now. It was time to strike back to balance the scales of justice. I felt no joy, no thrill of revenge. It was more of a cold determination to ensure that Elaine and her lover faced the consequences of their actions. The incriminating evidence that the private investigator had gathered was still locked away. A ticking time bomb waiting to be unleashed. I executed my next move. I made copies of all the footage and photographic evidence that the private detective gathered. I sent all of the information to the wife of my wife's affair partner and also gave her my number if she wanted to chat about. A month later, I got a call from my ex-wife's affair partner and she thanked me for sending that information. She ended up filing for divorce from her husband. In the following weeks, our house was sold. I got an additional $150,000 from the sale of the house. And my ex-wife got the other half. My ex-wife's affair partner's ex-wife became part owner of one of his restaurants and she got to keep the house, and she was awarded $6,000 per month in alimony for 7 years since the divorce and moving on with my life. I have started dating again after going on a few dates. I am hard-pressed to get into a serious relationship again.